Amidst us all dreaming dreams, we're going to discuss today how to find purpose amidst disappointment.
It was probably the first time I've ever taken a risk for myself and said, this is the direction that I want my life to go in.
How has that been when you've had a dream that you feel God has given you and then it doesn't work? I think that to me is something that feels so painful.
I didn't know a day like this would come, but I'd hate to be here and think that it was me that failed or that I was a failure because my business, quote unquote, failed.
How did you navigate, I guess, the grief of something ending to then feeling optimistic and excited about what's to come?
This is not a setback, it's a setup for a big comeback. And I just know with God, if you trust him, just get up, dust it off, and let's just go again.
Welcome to the Magnify Conversations. I'm Ruth, the founder of Magnify, a global platform and community focused on equipping ambitious women of faith.
I'm Sinead.
And I'm Julia, and together we are your hosts.
10 seasons in, and the conversations just keep getting better. I'm so glad you're stopping by to tune in.
We will never get over the fact that the Magnify Conversations has reached viewers in more than 50 countries in every continent.
We are so grateful to continuously receive comments and DMs telling us how these stories inspire and challenge you.
It energizes and encourages us to keep doing what we do.
This platform is all about helping you flourish personally and professionally with faith at the center.
Click the subscribe button now if you haven't already. It's quick, it's free, and it means you're always one step closer to a conversation that could change your life.
Today on the Magnify Conversations, we're speaking with Judith Omoregie about finding direction when the dream changes and navigating life beyond expectation.
Judith is a London-based entrepreneur and creator who started tech business eFitter with no prior experience and had to navigate its unexpected closure.
She now shares her journey on Substack and YouTube, exploring fashion, culture, and building a life of intention.
Let's get stuck into this conversation of reflection and rediscovering what matters most. Judith, welcome to this conversation. Ruth and I are so excited to dive into this. I know personally this is one that I've been looking forward to, but one that I really know will connect with everybody in our community, because amidst us all dreaming dreams, we're going to discuss today how to find purpose amidst disappointment. Amazing. Of which we've all had many. Yeah. So I think there's going to be a lot to chat through. But before we do, we've got an icebreaker.
So Judith and Julia, actually, what's one comfort thing you do, or maybe a book that you use to reset your mood?
Oh, comfort thing I do.
Or it could be a show you watch.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a show. I love TV shows. I'm a binge watcher. I always go back to Gilmore Girls. It's quite niche. It's just very nostalgic for me. It reminds me of uni days, and I discovered it very randomly, and I just watch it like the entire time. But yeah, that's my comfort show, I think, my reset.
Amazing. Jules?
Mine would 100% be Friends. Love it. Easy. Back to my childhood. Nostalgic, fun, zone out. What about you, Ruth?
Now we're in the TV zone, I would say watching the OC.
Yeah.
So during COVID, I watched like all of the seasons, and I was just like, oh, back when life was,
Different
no
times.
responsibilities.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so second icebreaker. If you could get on a one-way ticket, where would it be to if you could work remotely for 3 months? Where in the world would you go?
3 months?
Yeah.
I'd have to say Greece.
Nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
for
love
me,
Greece.
that's a no. Not with the cats.
No?
No way.
The blue skies.
Yeah.
Clear skies
Yeah.
all the time. No, I'd have to say Greece. I've been quite a few times, and Santorini is one of my favorite places.
beautiful.
So yeah, I'd love to work from there for 3 months. That would be like a dream.
Where would you go, Ruth?
Anywhere without cats. So I would say to Ibiza. I loved Ibiza, and I actually didn't see that many cats when I was there, so I'd feel safe
You are
going
really
back.
anti-cats.
I really am. I now look at, if I know like Morocco, I can't go back there. Turkey, it's a no for me. So yeah, hopefully I'll be delivered from this one day. But for now, here we are. Jules, where would you?
Barbados.
Nice.
I rode there. I've never flown there, so I'd like to just get on a just a 9-hour flight instead of a 6.5 week row. I haven't been back there since we landed in Barbados in 2011. So 2012. So I would love to go there for 3 months and just work and enjoy. Yeah.
So Judith, really excited to get into this conversation. So I'd love you to tell us a bit about your career at the start and kind of how you got into the multitude of things that you have done and are doing.
Yes, so I had a very traditional career, I would say, for the most part. So I studied law, I did the finance route, I did a master's in investment banking, and then I started my career in finance. And I definitely did it because I felt like I was supposed to. I think a lot of African children can relate when it's, we're told medicine or law or finance, those are the big three. So I kind of chose that career. But at the same time I started my career, I'd actually remembered a time when I was in Shanghai for my year abroad studying law, and I knew I wanted to solve a problem bigger than myself, but I didn't know what in. And I remember speaking to a friend and they were like, what do you care about? Like, what's a problem area that you are passionate about? And I knew I'd always loved fashion. I was blogging at the time. I was a fashion photographer at the time. And I was like, it's fashion. And I think one of the problems that I found was online shopping, buying clothing, having to return it online as well. And at the time, they didn't have a lot of, ways to do that. And it was expensive, it was tedious. And I was like, what if there was a solution that solved that problem? And that birthed my first business, which was eFitter, eFitter, and that led me here. So that was 5 years ago. And, along the way, we built a community, we built a product, and I quit my job in 2023 to pursue it full time.
Wow. And what was that journey like then, leaving a stable job in a, demanding industry to do this full time?
It was probably the first time I've ever taken a risk for myself and said, this is the direction that I want my life to go in, and I'm doing it for me and not because I think I'm supposed to. I definitely felt scared. I remember I filmed the whole thing, so my hand was literally shaking as I called my boss. I was just like, I think I'm gonna leave. And he's like, are you sure? We can do part-time. I was like, no. He's like, are you sure? I was like, no, I think I'm gonna go.
And was that because you felt you had to dive head first?
Yeah, I just felt like I didn't want to be one leg in, one leg out. And I always said, if working full-time got me to a point where it was taken away from the effort I could put into eFitter, then I'd have to leave. And I think it just reached that point. We were pivoting B2B. We needed to start cold calling people. We needed to start having those conversations during the working day. I just couldn't do both. And so it was a mix of a practical decision, but also a very emotional one where I was like, this is it. Like, I'm gonna go all in on this dream, on this idea, and see where it takes me.
And Judith, what was the dream for eFitter? I mean, it's an amazing idea. So what did it look like for you? What was the dream?
Great question. I think there were many dreams in one, but I think the biggest dream was that we wanted to become a household name for solving problems for online shopping. So we saw big things.
Which I hate, by the way.
Yeah.
Which I hate.
We had these conversations and a lot of women resonated with the problem because I think men never understood it, but women definitely did. And they were like, this is amazing, this is great. And obviously it was multi-layered in the sense of, yes, we're solving this problem on for a community of people, but we also could see where it could go when we partnered with bigger retailers, bigger brands, and we could really push it out there as a solution that, all brands need to reduce returns, but also do it for the environment as well. So there were benefits there. Yeah.
And for you then, what were some of the challenges in rewards? Because I know, for me with Magnify, I always say I think I left a stable job far too early because then there was so much pressure to kind of make it work immediately. And so I'd always wish that in the long run, in hindsight, I had tried to balance both a bit better. But what was the transition like for you? And what would you say were some of the rewarding aspects of it, but also challenging?
So for context, I started my career at the same time I started the business. So I've never known, I've never had the
That's
career
huge.
to just focus on or just the business. Yeah. And so I think that's why that decision was so big, because it was like I'm choosing one for once and I'm going to focus on that one thing. I think the most rewarding I'll start with challenging, actually. I think the most challenging thing was how resilient I had to become very quickly and how resourceful it required us to be. I definitely resonate with the whole quitting a job too early and too soon, because now I look back and I'm like, I could have saved more. I could have probably waited, but it felt like a now or never at the time. And I think hindsight is a beautiful thing, but it kind of robs you of how you were feeling in that moment. And I know in that moment, I was ready to try harder than I had and pour everything into it. So yeah, I think the most challenging part was we were bootstrapped the entire time. So we never actually raised money, and that was an intentional decision. And this would have been around the time we would have started. And looking back, I do think we could have done a lot of these big things sooner. So we could have raised earlier. We could have decided to pivot B2B earlier. We could have pivoted earlier. A lot of those decisions come up as challenges now, but looking back, it was just a journey. And I think the most rewarding thing has been the community that we built. We launched with a community-first approach, and is one of the things I'm most proud of. I think a lot of people walk into business with the idea of we're solving a problem, and that is it. Like that is our North Star, which I get. But I think there is something about building a community of people that resonate with the problem, but also can help you build the product. And that's the avenue that we took. And so when I look back, I always say our community was our first product before we had a product, because they informed us that, yes, we're on the right track. This is how we need to build and what we need to build. And every iteration we had for the product came from their feedback. So yeah, I think that's the most rewarding part for me.
And after years of building heart and soul, I mean, that is brave, that is risky, that is giving heart and soul. I mean, you had some years of working, but to go straight from the off, you are brave. And then abruptly, eFitters closed. Talk us through that. Like, how did that come about and why? And the disappointment must have been huge.
Yeah, I think one thing that looking back, I can see that I had to do over time was, I always say this, detach my self-worth from my work. So I'd spent a lot of time...
Very hard.
Very hard, very, very hard. I spent a lot of time doing that and having conversations with my co-founder about it, because I didn't know a day like this would come, but I'd hate to be here and think that it was me that failed, or that I was a failure because my business, quote unquote, failed. But I think when we started this year, or even last year, we pivoted B2B around this time, and we said, okay, we're gonna pour everything into business development, sales efforts. We're gonna, get that first partnership, and then the doors will open, and then we can, raise and scale. Like, that was the dream. That was, where we wanted to be by the end of this year, probably. But then we said, okay, the European market, they're not quite the pioneers that we'd love them to be for this tech. Let's move to the US. Let's try US brands. But the time that we tried was around the Thanksgiving time, the Christmas time, so no one's in the office. We're throwing everything at it. We're not getting responses. We're getting out of offices. We're like, okay, what can we do? What do we do? So I'm like, okay, let's extend our decision-making timeline, because we said end of the last year, if it's nothing, we leave. We extended that timeline to March of this year, and I kid you not, Trump gets sworn in, and then the tariff news happens, and then we're like, oh. And we had a contract out with our first brand. We had it out, it was in their hands, and we hadn't heard back. And this was even before announcement of tariffs, and they come back and they're saying, finance aren't sure, finance team said, no, we need to pause. And then the tariff news drops.
Wow.
And when that dropped, I think it was like a double, I don't want to say nail in the coffin, but it quite literally felt like another step back, another knockback. And when we looked at the market and we just started actually looking at what was happening in e-commerce at the time, what's been happening this year, people weren't investing in these type of businesses. People weren't investing in e-commerce. It almost felt like a no man's land. And I think, practically speaking, I'm looking at the numbers, I'm looking at the data, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And this wasn't at the start of us quitting our jobs and saying we're going to do it full time. This is a year in. And so there's a lot more at stake than I initially thought would be at this stage. But we had that conversation, and we left it for a while. We continued, we gave it one last push, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. And I think during that time, I also started going on this journey of self, like trying to find me again, trying to find what I loved. I loved fashion. I loved talking about, why we buy what we do, why we shop where we shop. The psychology behind consumerism really interests me. And so I started talking on TikTok towards the end of last year. And so I had that in my arsenal, and it kind of felt like, okay, I don't know what's happening with this because it's doing so well, but my business isn't. Like, everything was just so confusing. So when we made that decision, I definitely made it with the confidence that I would be okay. And this is just another step to get closer to where I'm supposed to be. And yeah, it was a very short conversation. It was, do we continue? If we continue, what does it look like? If we don't, what does it look like? And ultimately, it made sense to just close the business and move on, and so we did.
I have a question then for both of you, and Jules, it would be great to hear your experience as well. Because I think as women of faith here, that when you feel that God has led you to something, for many years with Magnify, I'm always like, God, why is it so difficult? But how has that been when you've had a dream that you feel God has given you and then it doesn't work? I think that to me is something that feels so painful. And there's also like a grief in how much you've poured into it, not just like money, but also your time. But I think that was interesting that you said also separating yourself from it being your identity. Because I think for a lot of us, when something fails, it's hard to just see it's failed rather than I have failed. But yeah, I'd love to hear from both of you. When a dream has changed or it's felt like it's not working, how did you navigate that in your faith?
Yeah, I mean, I became passionate fighting human trafficking, modern day slavery, sport, media were my world, rode across the Atlantic. And then off the back of that, felt really called to, I saw the power of sport be such a positive response to such an overwhelming injustice. So founded Sport for Freedom, which used the power of sport to raise awareness, to raise funds, to help actually rehabilitate survivors of trafficking through sport, which was thrilling and amazing. We worked with the Premier League and had gala dinners and all the things. And that was alongside my going to Sky Sports News at 4 a.m, finishing at sort of midday, and then doing a whole other day's work with Sport for Freedom. And I quickly realised that I am not a good strategist. I'm actually not good at, I just don't like governance. I don't like the numbers like you, well, as in you do and I don't. I learned so much along the way, as in getting the right people for the right jobs. And I think I heard somebody in church one day saying, if it's like carrying a dead horse up a hill, maybe it's time to put it down. And that has just always stayed with me, because we did wonderful things, but I was just running on empty. I was burning out. And I remember someone spoke over me though, many start and few, make it to the end. And I probably went a year or two longer than I should have. And actually, I went to two of my mentors and just people who I sort of look up to. And one was this guy, Christian guy, who said to me, Julia, maybe it is Sport for Freedom, maybe it isn't. But anyway, long story short, I ended up putting everything under another charity, Justice and Care. And the relief of putting it down was immense. And I just got under the umbrella of something bigger, something making more of an impact. So whilst we were doing good things, it was only sort of solving a bit of the pie of the issue, and just the relief of not having to do all the meetings and do all the things. For me, but I did feel a sense of failure, embarrassment, shame, but actually what I learned through failure and challenge and adversity was so rich and immense that actually I wouldn't change that journey now. I don't know about you, but...
No, I 100% agree. And I've thought about this a lot, because you're right. If God calls you to something and you're supposed to do it, why would it end? Why should it end? But I think it reminds me of the scripture that says the end of a thing is better than the beginning of said thing. And now that I'm here, I look back, and this is the better part of my 20s we're talking about. Like, I poured everything into it. I'm wiser for it. I know what I want to do. I have a certain confidence about me. I can speak in big rooms. I can pitch. I can sell a pen. Like I have gained so many skills that, you know, a normal 9-to-5 or a finance job could not have given me in that time, or I probably wouldn't have gone for it because I thought I wouldn't be qualified. And now there's almost like a notch in my belt where it's like I've built a business before. You know, even if I'm going back to 9-to-5, or even if I'm going back, you know, to another business that's similar and I can work under it similar to you, it's the purpose is still there. It's still within me. It's not tied to the outlet, if that makes sense. And I also think we tend to look at it from a place of shame, where, you know...
Why do we do that?
I don't know. I think it's an internalization of how we are perceived by others.
Because even if often you see someone that they did something, they're no longer doing it, you don't spend a great degree of time thinking, oh, that's so embarrassing.
Yeah,
You're just like, okay,
oh my God, you did
reason.
amazing. Like, move on.
Yeah.
But I think, I think everyone's worried about how it looks and how it comes across. And I've had friends also go through this same journey. And the one thing we always say to each other is, I'm so proud of you because you did it. Like, you did what 90% of people would never do.
So good.
You know, there's so much to be grateful for in that moment. But you always know when it's time to move, when you get that uncomfortable feeling, or when you think you've outgrown something. And I think listening to that is also God telling you that there's more ahead, and that's why the end of a thing can be better than the start. So, yeah.
I guess for both of you, how did you navigate, I guess, the grief of something ending to then feeling optimistic and excited about what's to come?
I mean, I think for me with Sport for Freedom, before you actually put the baton down or close the business, or there's a season of grief that leads up to it. I think it was mulling, praying, churning that over. And then when it does happen, I mean, for me, it was actually relief, which I think is God. I think the peace came. And yes, there was sadness and heartbreak and disappointment, which I had grieved, but actually, and not caring what, you know, we often think what everyone else is thinking, something, they're actually not. And who cares if they are anyway? But I actually really was relieved and then so excited about getting under something that was going to make more of an impact than I was on my own.
Amazing.
I think I took the words right out of my mouth. I think that's exactly how I felt. I can't say that last conversation that my co-founder and I had was a moment I felt it all. I think I'd been feeling it, to be honest. I think when that last contract didn't go through, I'd already just started. I like to think ahead and cover every single scenario that's ever possible in life, just to make myself feel better. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. And I think I'd thought about, okay, what if this doesn't get signed? What does that look like? And I think I did hold on longer than I needed to in that conversation, you know, like extending the deadline to December and then March. We didn't need to. I think the signs were there.
But you want it to
you
work,
love
don't
your first business, you know, you're
exactly.
You're so caught up in, you know, I took a leap. I quit my job. What does it look like if a year later I'm closing it? All of those thoughts went through my head. But I think ultimately that relief I felt, that peace I have felt, and that excitement I feel. I am so excited for what the future has in store, because if it's not my business, it's clearly going to be something even greater than what I imagined, because God is in control in my life and in everything I'm doing. So yeah, I definitely feel like that peace is a sign.
And Judith, do you feel like your identity or anything has been shaken, or you feel insecure, something got... No,
because I have done a hard thing. I've done a hard thing, and I've
Did
seen
you go into
end.
it with that approach? Because I think it's, speaking from experience, I feel in the beginning I was all like, I'm not Magnify. But then when you're pouring so much into something, and also when you are building a charity or a business, you're constantly introducing yourself as, I'm the founder of eFitter, I'm the founder of Sport for Freedom. So your identity kind of does become wrapped up into the thing. But I think I had to do a lot of work internally to separate myself, because it'd be like, say we launched something and it wouldn't work, and then you're feeling like, oh, what's wrong with me, as opposed to it's just something that didn't work. But I felt that if I didn't do that, it was going to crush me. And I was actually not going to find any fulfillment in this if it was so intertwined. But yeah, did you start with that approach or you developed it as you went along?
I think this is why I say like it's amazing to be able to grow with your business, because when I started, I was 22, 23. I was young. You know, I'd, seen people build businesses before and said, I want to do something big, like I want impact. And that was my avenue in. When I started, however, was a very different story, because those things happened. When a launch doesn't go well, or when the product or the amount of users we've had have been consistent, and I'm in charge of marketing, they've been consistent for the longest time. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, get somebody else to do it. I couldn't tell you the left from right. But I learned and I picked up the skills along the way. And I think the confidence that I have to say it doesn't affect me, or it's not taking anything away from me to walk away from this, is from doing the work and knowing that it's me that made the business what it was, and it's me that can do it again. I don't think it's, I don't think that the idea is ever tied to a person, but I do think the output, what you see, the launches, the successes are because of the work we put in. And I think now I'm very different to when I first started. Everything was personal. Like every launch was personal, every conversation was personal, every review was personal. I would take it all on my head, and it showed. I had a couple burnouts to show for it. But I had to do that work to sever the tie, I guess, between myself and my work, and ensure that I wouldn't put myself down for doing something that the average person probably couldn't do. It's a privilege to be able to solve a problem. It's a privilege to build relationships. It's a privilege to build a business. And it's also a privilege to walk away.
Wow.
What about you, Ruth? Like, I kind of feel like you've got so much wisdom in this by contrast to our journeys. Like, how have you... I can imagine, I know your vision and your passion and the work that goes into Magnify, and you do many other things. You've launched your own business aside of this. You're not just Magnify, but what wisdom, like how do you keep going? How do you know?
I ask myself every day.
How do you know that it's right to keep going amidst the adversity and the challenges and the major challenges that come up naturally?
So I remember there was a point in 2016. So the way Magnify started is obviously we didn't have any money, so everyone was volunteering. And I had grown with Magnify. So a lot of the women I met are now some of my best friends. But as we were growing, it was like everyone was going to Goldman Sachs, starting their own business. And the volunteer team went from like 50 to, I remember when it was like the final person was like, I'm really sorry, but I need to choose my career. And I think in my head, I then was like, am I being stupid? Because we've had like 50 people now and it's literally just you. And at that point, I did actually start to apply for jobs. And I was like, God, I'm actually not even tied to this. Like, I will just go and work in the city and take that sacrifice of the 6-figure salary. I'll put that on my head. And I remember going to one interview, and obviously the majority of my experience was Magnify. So the guy saw Magnify and he was like, this is amazing. Like, why are you leaving this to come and work here? And I was like, okay, well, that's a bit odd that this is what like the HR department is saying. But I felt that I was like, God, I will go to Tesco. I will go and be a receptionist. I just need to have some stability, because building something is actually draining me now, having to have resilience on like a daily basis. So I think with me, if I'm honestly speaking, that even the times when I've tried to walk away, and then it was like a few months later, ended up meeting a group of people who were like, we really want to back this for the next stage. And they were like, you need to be doing this full time, you need to be paid. That even the times when I've tried to walk away, I feel like God has always just opened like a miraculous, unbelievable door. But I think within that, I'm also now conscious that I am building myself and building my life outside of Magnify. And what do I mean by that? Even now, being married, having kids, that being my priority. And before, I was much happier, much willing to like, even if I never slept, I was like, it's all for the vision. And now I'm like, I can't show up in the other areas of my life if I'm literally giving everything I have to Magnify. But I think that has also been almost a sense of grief to feel like I've been doing this since I was 19, I'm 37 now, so almost half of my life has been doing Magnify. And when you're used to going 1,000 miles an hour, giving everything, I'm just not in a season where literally they're just not the hours in the day to be able to do that. But I think the journey for me has been learning to uncouple my identity from it and knowing not kind of, what's the word? God doesn't need to work to my schedule. And if it's his vision, I need to be following his vision, not the other way around. So there'd be times where I get disappointed, like, I feel you've given us a vision to reach millions of women. And it's like, God gave me a vision to reach women. I'm the one that put the millions. So then getting disappointed that it hasn't grown at the pace that I have, I think it's also helped me in my faith to have my priorities in order. But a question for you, because you touched upon how you're very much like you have everything planned out. When your dreams don't go as you hoped, you prayed, how has that expanded or changed your view of walking with God?
I think it's expanded it, not changed it. I think sometimes when we have a dream, or we have an idea of how our life's supposed to pan out, the problem is we're sometimes thinking too small or too linear. And I don't believe God works how we think he works. I do believe that, if you're called to something, it's not in the business. It's not always going to be in the business or in the relationship. It could be in different ways. So even the fact that you're like, I know I need stability, maybe I should go back to a job, and God's like, no, here's money to do it and continue doing it. I've learned not to limit God. I think that's been the biggest lesson. I have an idea and I love to, plan my entire life. And I think age has made me wiser to know that I'm a fool for planning, because it's not my calling, as in I didn't call myself, he called me. And so when I relinquish that, I guess, control to God, I'm basically saying, I trust wherever you're taking me. I will just do the best with what is in front of me. And so if it's a business, I'm going to be the best that I can be for this business. And if it's now a job, I'm going to be the best I can be for this job. And wherever that takes me, I know greater is ahead, because I'm continuing to serve in the capacity that I'm in. And I think it's an expansion, less of a change. I see him now as the God of the impossible, God of miracles, because the person I was is not the person I am today. I have completely changed. I'm more settled. I understand myself more than ever. And I love that I can take that away as a win on this journey.
And it feels like you're just purpose and calling have sort of been redefined and reignited.
Exactly.
And there's more passion to go again.
Exactly. I do feel, as I'm talking now, I do feel that, because I think when I thought about an end of a business, I've always seen it as a bad thing. It's never really seen as a success story. It's always seen as, oh, that's so sad. But it's also like, no, this is great. That means that what's next, what's coming next? And I think having that attitude is because I believe that God can do it again and do it better.
Oh, amazing. Jules, to you as well, because I feel like where your life was however many years ago, it's completely changed. How has something not working out expanded or changed your view of God?
Oh, I just think I have just seen God do it again and again and again and again. Romans 8:28, he's working it all for the good. And this side of eternity, we might not know the answers of why some things fell. There might be some people in our community now, it's like, well, I'm on my knees with this, or I'm heartbroken that my business is failing. Like, with God, if you allow him and you don't get bitter and you just trust. Trust is a big word for me. It was my word for 1 year, where I looked up every verse in the Bible on trust. And God says it a lot. And he is just so faithful. And when it's hard to trust and when it feels scary, maybe you've lost everything. Like, how do you trust? Well, you trust because you trust because you trust. So I think for me, amidst disappointment, amidst surfing the waves of life, amidst business or, charity life, I'm just sitting here thinking, wow, Judith is 20 years younger than me. And the wisdom, and maybe 10 years, but the wisdom, I'm always blown away by your wisdom. I'm blown away by your wisdom. this is not a setback, it's a setup for a big comeback. And I just know with God, if you trust him, just get up, dust it off, and let's just go again. And in Romans 8, it's like, what's next, Papa? I'm on the edge of my seat. Well, I'm on my edge of my seat for you and me, because I just know that God is always, I don't know entirely what's next for me. I've been out of, I've been a mummy, stay-at-home mummy for this season, which is so obscure, so weird, so uncomfortable initially. But I'm actually on the edge of my seat because I know that there's good things coming and I can trust God. And if we choose to, like with our Atlantic Grow, the failures, the setbacks, the disappointments, you think you're going there to there? Well, we all know that we go there to get there. And those God adventures, like I often have spoken, and it's like, if it went there to there, what would I have to tell you? We wouldn't be sat here today had you not gone through the failure. You wouldn't have much to say if you didn't have all these disappointments and setbacks. So actually, I see them as a privilege and an opportunity to grow. And grow we do.
So on that then, what advice would you give for us to grow through it and be excited about what's next rather than being bitter? Because I've seen it in different areas of life when something doesn't work out, whether it's you become bitter at life in general, God, other people who are experiencing what you don't. It's a very human emotion, but how do we not? Because I think it's easier once you're on the other side to be like, actually, it worked out. Like, I can see why, I'd even do that again. But when you're in the midst of that and you're not even at the cusp of feeling like I'm on the edge of my seat, how do you not stay bitter?
I, for me, think, you tell me after, Judith, but I think I feel like God has put the most phenomenal mentors in my life. And on one hand, my sword sisters who I do life with. And I really think that having mentors who could just see it outside of you being, not seeing the wood for the trees. I think having mentors in my life who could just call out the truth, or actually, no, that wasn't right, or that isn't right for you now. I think being surrounded by people who can speak truth, okay, let's move on now, or what are the lessons we've learned from it? It's fine to have a season of just, okay, that was hard, and reflecting on it, and it takes time to go again sometimes. So I think for me, just having people around me who I value, who I am inspired by, who I know are for me, has been really a gift, a God-given gift. What about you, Judith?
I think I'm the same. I think I've been surrounded by people that believe in me more than I believe in myself. My parents are incredible. My friends are incredible. But I also think it's important to take stock of how you feel and be honest. I'm sitting here and I'm speaking with so much clarity because I've internally sat down and thought, how do I actually feel? How do I feel when I see someone else still, doing great things with their business and I can't say the same? How do I feel when I see someone else starting a new business that's maybe similar to mine or in the same field? Do I feel triggered by that? Am I offended that it's not me? Like, those are the questions I had to ask myself. While I'm grateful that the answer was no, a lot of the times I actually didn't feel those things that I thought I would. I'd understand if anyone did. I think it's normal. I think it's actually part of the grieving journey and the grieving process to, they say the 7 stages of grief, like, you're angry, you're upset. I think being honest with how you feel, but then also thinking about what could be after this journey, what could be for you, what could be when you say goodbye to a thing. I'm really fond of walking away before, instead of staying and holding on just to save face or just to make myself feel better. And so that bitterness, yes, I think people can call you out for it, but you will also, if you were doing the work to know who you are and why you were doing or taking the chance in the first place, you should be able to recognize that as, okay, I need to work on this. I need to go back to my quiet place with God and dive into why I feel like this or why I feel like that. And in doing that, I think the answers are there, and then the things that you can work on moving forward are there as well. But I'm grateful that there is no, bitterness. I'm grateful that I'm in a position to say, well, it was a good run, on to the next. But I'm also very aware of what I've lost, but what I could gain moving forward. And I think that's where I've set my eyes on, and I'd recommend for anyone else, they should definitely do the same.
That is amazing. So I always love to say how like I came across some of the women that we get to interview. So you popped up on my YouTube feed in January. And the strangest thing was, like, in all of my girls' chat, everyone was like, have you seen this amazing girl, Judith? And we're like, how do we all have the same algorithm? But I feel like that video that you had in January must have been pushing you out to, like, absolutely everyone.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, that just feels like, so for anyone watching who doesn't know, would you like to talk about that video? And just
tell
also
me, 'cause
that,
I
like,
don't know. Yeah.
you need to go watch it after this. But I think what I will say before you answer is it's very rare to see people share in real time the realness of a journey. And obviously there's a balance to that and there's wisdom that one needs to employ. But I think a lot of times people are either talking in hindsight where it's like, at the time, I didn't know that it was going to work out, but they're showing you when they've got a £100 million business and you're like, okay, at some stage you figured out it was going to work. But it's been really interesting to see you document your life changing in real time. But I'd love you to talk about that video and just also this new season of sharing.
Yeah. At the time, I will be honest, I'm not really a consumer of YouTube, so I actually don't watch YouTube. But when I was...
You're saving hours of your life, I can tell you. Someone who watches YouTube a lot.
So I think it was December, so this is before we were officially closing the business. I felt very much like I was at a crossroads for myself because, you know, my content creation on TikTok's doing well, my Substack is doing well. I think I had like 1,000 subscribers at the time. So I'm like, okay, like I've got something of my own. What do I want to do? And yeah, it was a crossroads for me because I knew I wanted to change my life this year. It just felt like there wasn't a better time than now. So yeah, I didn't really care about the followers. I didn't care about subscribers. I just knew I had to do this for myself. And I said it was a very selfish thing for me because I wanted to look back a year from now and say, I did it. I changed my life. And you can look back and actually see in real time how I did it. And when I sat down to do it, obviously crossroads for my business, crossroads for myself, but I felt like I could not stay where I was just in between. Should I go back to finance? If I quit, if the business doesn't work, should I start a new career in marketing? How do I do that? How do I pivot? I asked everybody that I could think of during this journey, but documenting it for me was a very important thing because no one shows that messy middle. No one shows how awful, you know, figuring it out is in real time. And I'm glad I have, and I'm obviously nowhere near my dream life in and of itself, but I'm closer each and every time I turn that camera on and I share my story. And yeah, that's where I am.
And is one of these videos what you saw?
Yeah, so literally, it must have had, I feel like in the first week it had like 100,000 views.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
it was just crazy.
Never seen anything like it.
Which shows the need and the hunger for, I mean, the messy middle.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of New Year content online is like, it's not the messy middle. It's like, last year was so great and this year is going to be even greater. So I guess your video at the start of the year was obviously on changing your life in a year. And I sometimes struggle with what's the balance as a woman of faith in saying, I trust God, but also still applying yourself and taking action. Because I know, like, personally, that's a journey I've been on this year with brand strategy and working with clients. I always felt like I was gifted to do it, but I thought just somehow, like, by magic, it would just kind of happen. But this year I was like, I actually need to, the skills God has given me, I actually need to apply myself. So for you, what's the balance? And is there actually ever a tension point?
I think the scripture that always rings in my head is faith without works is dead. You have to do the work. I'm very passionate about doing the work. And I think that's almost why I decided to film it, because I was like, I can be here again next year. I can. And it's very easy to, because I think we hype ourselves up so much and give ourselves the endorphins.
And also our friends hype us up as well.
Yeah, like, yeah, you can do it. Yeah. Nothing happens, you know? Where's the strategy? Where's the plan? Where's the follow through? And it's actually very interesting that I've done it this way, because I'm usually the one that comes in after, like, guys, yeah, I did something amazing, you know, and this is how. But showing it is a different level of faith, is a different level of trust, because God forbid, I very much could end up a year later in exactly the same place, even though I applied myself. That is a reality that obviously I've, like, you know, that could happen. But I'm holding on to the hope and the prayer that will not be my testimony, will not be my story. But what will be my story is that you can see the track record of me trying at something. Okay, that didn't work. I tried again at this thing, and I'm trying this, and I'm doing this, and I'm carving this dream life. God is the author ultimately, but he's given me the tools to make it happen. So there is no reason why I should sit back and relax. And I think we do take God for granted sometimes when it comes to the dreams that we have and the hopes, because we know that he's a faithful God and he will see us through. Yes, but we do have to meet him where he's at. I think it does say that man has to move for God to move. It does say in the Bible that, God will move, but man also needs to do something with what he's been given.
Absolutely.
And I'm very passionate about that. I don't believe that our faith excuses or the trust in God excuses laziness. Proverbs would tell us the opposite. So yeah, that would be my answer.
What would you say to somebody who's listening within our community who is on their knees? What's the one takeaway that you would both encourage them to do now?
You kind of said it already, but run to God even when you feel angry. I think for me, it's like when you don't do that, you just go around in circles and ultimately you're still going to end up there anyway.
Yeah.
So I think run to God even when you're angry. And also I know you asked for one thing, but be honest about your emotions. And again, speaking from personal experience, when everyone was going and getting jobs, buying houses, being able to actually do things with their life, and I was having to sit in a coffee shop for 9 hours drinking water, I did feel very resentful. But in the beginning, I used to be like, no, I've never been so excited to be on this track. And I think when you're not honest with yourself and you're not honest with God, it just makes things a lot harder than they need to be. So yeah, that's me. Well, how about you, Judith?
Great. I think mine would be that there is a privilege in your now that the average person does not have. What has been placed in front of you is in front of you for a reason. Do the best that you can with it and let God do the rest. I think it's very easy to compare ourselves like you described, and I've done it many a time, but I always can say that I have done the best with what I've been given. And that for me is probably the greatest gift that I can give back to God is, okay, you gave me the seed, I sowed it and I reaped 5, I reaped 10, I reaped 15. That in itself is the privilege of doing the work, or the privilege of building the business or building this community or building that charity is in actually, sowing the seeds that God has given you to do.
Amazing. And we always here love to get involved and support you. What's one or maybe two things that our community can do to support all the stuff that you're doing at the moment?
Follow you. How can we follow you?
Of course.
On YouTube?
YouTube, I'm Judith Lola YT. I'm very much documenting the journey live, so you can follow me and catch up on the old videos as well. And I'm on TikTok and Substack and Instagram, Judith Lola _. And I talk about fashion, I talk about my dream life, I talk about my journey.
Amazing.
So exciting.
This has been I feel like I've mentally taken so many notes, but Judith, thank you so much. We've loved having you on the Magpie Conversations. Thank you for joining us for today's incredible episode of the Magnify Conversations. We hope you're feeling inspired and ready to pursue your next steps.
It's amazing to see this series watched globally.
If you have a story to share and would like the chance to feature as a guest, visit magnifycollective.com and fill in our contact form.
And if you're a brand that shares our vision and would like to sponsor another season, whether in the UK or internationally, please email us at info@magnifycollective.com to connect.
Hit subscribe right now so you can be the first to know when an episode drops.
From all of us at Magnify, thank you for watching, and we cannot wait to see you in the next episode.